Got 11 o'clock. You know, if we'd have started at 7:30, we'd been finished by now.
Let's pretend like we did.
Yeah, just pretend like it's 7:30. So, we've got 5 bills today, which concerns me, considering the only way these things will make it through crossover is they get on this supplemental calendar for day 30, which is going to make me be late leaving. But that's okay. That's okay. Would you join me in prayer, please? Dear Lord and Savior, we're thankful for the many blessings of this life. Give us understanding, give us wisdom, and give us strength. And forgive us where we failed thee. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay. Like I said, we've got 5 bills. We're going to start off with one that we've been working on, seems like forever. House Bill 470. Mike Pryson, Pharmacy Bill of Rights, Chairman Knight and Chairman Stevens are going to come up and talk to us a little bit about that bill. To give you a little background, this bill it was dropped last session. We worked on it. We worked on it a lot since right at the first of session, and we had our final meeting on it Tuesday of last week. And I want to commend both sides of this issue for agreeing to compromise on several issues, and they worked this out real well. I think everybody's happy with it. I've even had some pharmacists from I think Chairman Harbin's community to give me a call this morning and say thank you for this bill. So I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Knight and let him begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. First, I want to thank the chairman for his leadership in this, and he's very correct. Both parties did sit down and sort of negotiate and compromise in regards to what went on here, and I'd like to personally commend the chairman because he led that, and I certainly appreciate that. I'm going to be brief, and I'll go over any part and detail of the bill that the committee would like to go over, but I'm just going to generally hit it. You know, this committee, I'm sure, has seen before the issues that are going on out there, particularly related to the PBMs and our pharmacists, particularly our independent pharmacists. I'm sure each of you have had calls or have maybe if you use an independent pharmacist, and I personally hope you do, you know, the issues that they're having in regards to the interaction with the PBMs, the MAC pricing, and others, their reimbursement, sort of the not only the timing of those reimbursements, sort of, you know, not knowing the response times, the audit issues that they're having. A lot of those issues are what's going on in this bill, and also the issue of being able to hopefully at some point finally go to somebody within the state and have a third party look at this other than through a contractual type arrangement, and that being the insurance commissioner. So in brief, this bill is going to touch on those topics, and I think one of the biggest things is that we're going to now put the PBMs up under the insurance commissioner such that there is a independent or a third party out there which when these issues arise that they can go to and have some third party redress and oversight of these issues. But that's basically, you know, why we're here. And with that, Mr. Chairman, if there's any specifics in the bill, or if anyone wants to go over any part of the bill, I'm happy to. But with that, also, we're going to let Chairman Stevens also make some comments in his view of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, thank you again for your leadership on this bill, and I appreciate the members of the committee for allowing us to come before you. This bill addresses 4 major issues for pharmacies and the cloud that's in between having somebody, anybody, to go to whenever there's disputes and where the law of Georgia may have been broken. And the 4 issues are, with the price updates, for those of you that have been getting calls from your pharmacies back home, that'll be done now every 5 days. We now have an enforcement authority in the insurance commissioner if, in fact, the law has been broken for the state of Georgia. Auditors, my daughter's at home right now going through 8,600 records for an audit that we hope turns out okay, but it's the auditors currently typically are paid on a percentage basis, usually a third for everything they can find. So if I have a $2,000 prescription, you can see there's quite an incentive to look for clerical errors and other. This bill addresses that and fixes it. And the auditors now will be paid on a fee instead of a percentage of compensation.
Be on salary, right?
They'll be on salary.
Right, okay.
And the recoupment for transcription errors, those things are basically eliminated. And that basically is all that it does. It took enormous amount of hours on behalf of both sides coming together and talking about it, and it is the result here. There is, as we move along, some clarifying language to make sure that MAC pricing through the RFP process with Georgia Medicaid is corrected, but I would hope that we could pass this bill out as we work it through. And Mr. Chairman, that's essentially it.
Okay, thank you. I think you do have a proposed amendment to this as far as Medicaid is concerned.
Yes, sir. Did you get the language?
There it is.
That is the language. Well, no. Well, and I may rely on the committee as far as the proper amendment to make. But basically, the issue that we're addressing here is that there's already an RFP by the state out there for Medicaid, and it's already set in the RFP that the maximum allowable cost pricing schedule is to be updated no less frequent than every 2 weeks. So I guess what we're trying to do is this provision in here is in regards to the pharmacist. I think was it 5 business days. We want to make sure that we're not stepping on already that contract that's out there, and that RFP, contract was based on that RFP with Medicaid, and so whatever language or the appropriate spot, make sure that this excludes the Medicaid.
Our attorneys over here. On House Bill 470, we want to exclude Medicaid. Where would we put that, and what recommended language would you recommend?
There is some language that we use traditionally to exclude Medicaid, and I don't have that memorized, so if you give me just a minute to
That'll be fine.
figure that out. So there we can.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, that language should essentially be that the price updates will be at least every 14 days for Georgia Medicaid.
Okay. Well, but while she's looking that up so we can be sure that you have the exact language, does anybody on the committee have a question? 21?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Knight, I just want to verify, isn't it true that in many of these cases out here now, because of the extended time frame between when some of these prices are updated in the system, that many of these prescriptions that, say, a small town independent pharmacy is filling, that in a lot of those cases they're actually losing money on those prescriptions, but they don't sometimes tell their customers that because they don't want them to go somewhere else, but they just do it because it's their customer.
You're right, and I think that may be more of the detail of why we're here, but can you imagine being in a business where you've signed a contract that says, we're going to pay you, we'll pay you what we're going to pay you, when we're going to pay you, and we'll tell you when that is later. Okay, and a lot of times that's what the independent pharmacists are doing, is they're going out there, they're serving the patients, but because this MAC pricing is being delayed and it's changing, these pharmacists are having to go out there on the wholesale market and purchase these drugs, okay, and they're subject to whatever the market is, but later on they'll get, hey, here's what the MAC price, maximum allowable cost that we're going to reimburse you is, and the horror stories that I actually not only heard but actually saw in some of my local hometown was there were times, especially due to market influence, that drugs went up 10 times what they had previously purchased them for. Okay, so there were actually outside market influences that had affected that, and that drugs actually went up 10 times. But they were having to buy it at the higher prices, but yet getting reimbursed later on to come to find out at a very low price. And that's the importance of the MAC pricing, and why we want it every 5 days is that's going to give our independent pharmacists their businesses, and they're going to have the ability to make sure that they understand what they're being the recoupment or the reimbursement of their cost is going to be, so they can better manage their business and not get left holding the bag, so to speak, with trying to serve their customers and then still trying to figure out how they're going to make a profit on some of these prescriptions and drugs that they're basically having to eat the cost or a portion of the cost in order to serve the customer.
I'm going to make an executive decision. Mr. Atwood, we'll hold off on your question for a minute. We're going to suspend discussion on this until Legislative Council has a chance to get the exact wording. We'll go ahead and address another bill, and then we'll come right back to y'all. But I want to be sure that language is right, that it exempts Medicaid out of that. So, if y'all don't mind going over there with her, we'll see the line and or unless you have it. Okay, that'll be fine. We'll go ahead and take care of another bill. All right. Let's see, which one do I want to do? Yeah. Ms. Taylor, you want to present 409?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Today I bring you House Bill 409, substitute LC 371978S. This is a very needed bill. Unfortunately, it's something we're having to bring up. It has to do with the code relating to insurance general provisions to provide for reimbursement for treatments for burns and skin substitutes. A few health insurance carriers have recently had a policy change that resulted in a decision to stop reimbursing physicians for skin grafting using allograft, which is a frozen skin cadaver, deeming it experimental. However, frozen cadaver skin is FDA approved. As a health claims payer for over 35 years, I have always allowed frozen cadavers as reimbursable. It has never been deemed experimental. And since the early 1960s, Medicare has allowed these procedures as covered expenses. No clinical trials are necessary to prove that this is in general practice and it is not experimental. These few carriers are now suggesting that physicians can only use fresh and unfrozen cadaver skins to be reimbursed by their policies. This is problematic, as burn units generally do not have facilities of a morgue to be able to obtain the other products. Sales of the largest skin graft suppliers in the U.S., Allosource, consist of 97% of frozen, cryopreserved, and 3% of fresh. A second suggestion is that physicians use Transite, which is another type, but it's a foreign company, and it has not made this product available for commercial use in the U.S. since 2007. Third and finally, and most curious suggestion, is an alternative. It's a product that is exceptionally expensive. And CMS has accepted the use of this product for Medicare, but it pays the same reimbursement no matter which one you use. That's where the rationale really has gotten lost in this. Frozen cadaver skin costs $1.60 per square centimeter. Integra cost $146 per square centimeter. The burn units, the JMS, purchase 3 million square centimeters annually and are a $5 million client. So that's how much that they spend on it. If they were forced to change and purchase this other type, it would be $440 million they have to pay. Again, CMS approves equal reimbursement. It would just mean the providers are absorbing a gigantic $435 million cost. There's also a patient safety matter involved, as the risk of infection using fresh cadaver skins is greatly increased over frozen. It is proven that HIV transmissions and other virus transmissions are higher in fresh skin. I would say it needs to be the doctor's choice to be able to do this, and the carrier is not instructing burn surgeons to use the three alternatives, but it's not reimbursing them at the same amount. I would ask if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them.
Well, there's one point too that in talking with the doctors, and they sent me a copy of the form. If they use the fresh cadaver skin, and you know you get this skin to organ donors, you know you all will get a chance to apply for that. But if they use the fresh cadaver skin, then the doctor has to sign a release saying that if the patient contracts a disease, whether it's HIV or whatever, from the use of that fresh skin, that they release the company who supplied the skin, and they assume responsibility under the if they use the frozen cadaver skin, which after it's thawed it's just like normal skin, if they use the frozen, then the company who supplies the product assumes the responsibility. So like I told the doctor, I never would sign that thing. So I hate that we're talking about this right before lunch, but but you know that's part of being in insurance. Let's see, I got number 27.
Appropriate time, I'd make a motion.
Okay, anybody else got a question? Okay, I guess it's appropriate time.
I move to pass.
All right, second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Very good. I would encourage everybody who gets a bill passed today to take it to the rules office on your way out the door, because the only place it'll get on would be the supplemental calendar, like I said, so don't delay. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Are y'all finished over there? Oh, right there. Okay, we'll do another one then. Mr. Stevens, since you're not part of the discussion over there or standing around watching, we'll do 429.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 429 is something that came personal to me. This bill addresses an issue that has popped up in another state. I won't name the state. But it essentially, whenever you have a terminal illness and the physician has come to you and says you've only got a few months to live, this particular bill says that if the doctor is giving you a drug, you can't be pulled from that drug if it's doing its stated purpose, if it's doing what it's supposed to do and is medically treating you. My dad had a terminal illness, aggressive lung cancer, back 3.5 years ago. And that particular illness, his prognosis was about 3 months. They gave him a drug called Tarceva. It's about $5,000 a month. And 3 months ago, he was given a letter of clearance, so there's no cancer. So I would ask that that you pass this bill so that the temptation in other states to withdraw the drug that has been medically necessary by a licensed physician just can't happen, and insurance would be required to pay that. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the extent of the bill.
Okay, with number 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Chairman Stevens, for bringing this bill. You were very gracious not to mention the other state. I assume you're referring to Oregon.
Yes, sir.
Which has a very different set of values than Georgia does. You know, as I was thinking about this bill, I remember a statement that was made by Florida Congressman Alan Grayson, who said this, quote, "If you get sick in America, this is what the Republicans want you to do. If you get sick, America, the Republican health care plan is this: die quickly." And I just want to say thank you for bringing a very important bill that frankly says the exact opposite of what Congressman Grayson says, and unfortunately what some other states have decided that should be the health care plan.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I don't see any more lights on.
Just ready to make a motion?
Okay, let's see.
Do pass.
All right, we got to do pass second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
429 just passed. I guess 470 is ready now.
I think Leg Council, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Legislative Councilman Whitten. 15, all right.
Okay, if y'all look with me at line 158, after this days semicolon, and the suggested language is however, comma, such pricing information update shall be at least every 14 business days for those contracts pursuant to Article 7 of Chapter 4 of Title 49.
Okay. Now, after which semicolon is it? After the formula?
It's days semicolon.
That's after days, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have a proposed amendment to this bill on after days. If you'll read that one more time.
Okay. However, such pricing information update shall be at least every 14 business days for those contracts pursuant to Article 7 of Chapter 4 of Title 49.
Okay. All right, I have ready for motion?
Yeah, we need a motion.
I need a motion on that. All right, second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, we got 6122 ERS as amended that we'll be voting on. All right, is there any other questions on this particular bill, House Bill 470 as amended? We got a do pass. Mr. Atwood, you had a question a while ago?
I did, Mr. Chairman. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I have actually spoke just a few weeks ago with members, some independent pharmacists in my district, and they've expressed the same issues and problems this bill helps to correct. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. All right, we got a motion to pass. Got a second? Second. Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Does pass. Thank y'all. Head straight to rules. All right. Got two bills left. Mr. Chokus, you ready? House Bill 84. We go from pharmacists to skin grafts to airplanes. Are you going to do the Chokus rule today?
I don't know if I've got enough for everyone, sir.
Well, yeah, just pass it on. I'll take it.
Don't you fly? Yes, sir. So, can't you excuse yourself from this work? I can. As long as you're drinking while you fly, I guess it's okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Probably Friday.
I bring to you committee substitute to House Bill 84, LC 371966S. The basic issue that we have facing us in the insurance industry that addresses aviation, because it's a small group, is started off with causal versus contract. And if you're a pilot and you own an airplane, or if you're a business and you own an airplane, the insurance policy in the state of Georgia is contract. So if it's not specifically addressed in the contract, then you're not covered. Other states have gone to a causal type of interpretation of insurance. And causal means that it basically has to deal with the cause of the claim. Now, that was the original discussion, and several members of the insurance industry were concerned about taking such a big leap. But that's the trend in the states. South Carolina and Florida already are causal. As a matter of fact, I took the opportunity to check insurance prices. Because the industry has said in the past that when you go from contract to causal, your insurance policies are going to cost more. And they're on par today, Georgia and South Carolina. The Florida policies are a little bit higher, but that's because of hurricane risk involved. The original purpose of the bill was to address one area of aviation insurance, and that area of aviation insurance deals with ferrying of an aircraft. And when you ferry an aircraft, you have to get special permission from the FAA. The FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, governs aviation completely. They're very, very specific. The industry requires a lot of specific regulations that are not related to other areas. With that being said, I passed out an airworthiness certificate permit, and if you have a situation where your aircraft either needs repairs or is out of an annual or several reasons listed up here, where you have to alterations, repairs, maintenance, storage, whatever, you have to get a temporary airworthiness certificate from the FAA, and that addresses a specific flight, one flight, where you have a mechanic, certified mechanic by the FAA. His license is contingent on him following all rules and regs of the FAA. Fly a permitted aircraft from one location to another for a specific reason. Well, the way it was brought to me was there was an individual in North Georgia who had an airplane. His mechanic got the appropriate FAA permit to fly his aircraft from one place to the other, and there was a mishap. The owner of the aircraft filed a claim, and the claim was denied because a phone call was not made. And that's what the substitute addresses. The substitute addresses this particular issue. If you ferry an aircraft and you get permission from the FAA, and they don't give it to you lightly, you just have to call up and say, I need a permit. You have to fill out this form and it has to be approved. It's a lengthy process. Once that permit is given, then either the owner of the aircraft or the mechanic has to call the insurance company that covers the aircraft and inform them of the fairing, at which time your aircraft is covered. If you do not make that phone call, your aircraft is not covered. The substitute addresses specifically that once you get the permit, you do not need to make the phone call to your insurance agent. I talked with 2 flight instructors. One of them, a friend of mine, has got 18 different ratings. He's rated for jets. He's rated for multi-engine. He was talking about the courses that he took to get his certifications, and one of them was navigating the Pacific. So it wasn't, this guy is very knowledgeable. He did not realize that you had to make a phone call. I talked with the people that in Americas at my FBO, they do maintenance and repairs. They did not know that you had to make the phone call. I talked with other flight instructors to let, they're teaching someone to fly with the potential of buying an aircraft. I talked with them, and they did not know that once you get the FAA permit, you have to call the insurance company as well. That's the essence of the bill. The lines 22 through, I want to say, 28 addresses that an insurer shall not deny payment of a claim or otherwise deny coverage or cancel a non-renewal policy as a result of any loss that occurs while the aircraft is being operated pursuant to and in compliance with federal aviation regulations. Special flight permit provisions, and based upon the fact the aircraft is being operated pursuant to such regulations. Provided further, an insured shall not be required to give any notice to his or her insurer prior to operating the aircraft pursuant to federal aviation regulations. Now, lines 29 through 34 were included at the request of AIG. And basically what they wanted to do was highlight or put in bold lettering their exclusions. I included that in the substitute. Any policy or insurance containing one, all, or any combinations of the specific exclusions or conditions in these categories permitted in subsection D of this code shall include conspicuous notice advising the insured that the policy contains such exclusions or conditions and provide specific instructions as to what action the insured shall undertake in order to protect and preserve his or her rights and coverages under the policy. Well, members of the committee, once you have the FAA permit, it strikes me as odd that an insurance company would deny coverage. To me, it's like denying coverage if your mechanic takes your car out for a test drive and not calling the insurance company. With that being said, I talked with Ms. Lynn, and she said that we need to do, excuse me, some corrective language, and I'd like for her to call on her this time to make that point, please.
Okay. All righty. After you.
Okay. Upon preparing the substitute, I made a mistake and did not update the introductory language at line 2. And if you would bear with me just real quickly, we're going to delete unless the insured's action or failure to act had a direct causal connection to the loss upon which the claim is based, and replace it with language based on certain losses. Can't read my handwriting. Pursuant to special flight provisions, semicolon, to provide for conspicuous and clear exclusion notices.
Okay. You want to read that one more time?
Okay. Based on certain losses, pursuant to special flight provisions, semicolon, to provide for conspicuous and clear exclusion notices.
Okay, so that would be an amendment language to the starting in line 2. Do I hear a motion we accept the amendment? All right. All in favor, say aye. Okay. All right, now we have couple of questions on your bill, Chairman Chokas. Number 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. To the author, I've got several questions. You said that there's a requirement that the telephone call be made.
Okay.
Is this contractual in the policy?
Okay.
Okay. Is the problem typically limited to the hull or physical damage insurance, or is this an exclusion in the liability as well?
When you ferry an aircraft, there's multiple reasons that you could have it ferried, and those are addressed on page 1 of the application for U.S. airworthiness certificate. If you go down to about the middle of the page under certification request, and you go across from 8 special flight permit, the very first one says ferry flight for repairs, alterations, maintenance, storage. Underneath that,
Now, are we on the front page or the actual? Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go to section 2, and then cross from 8. You see where it says 8 special flight permit? And then there it says ferry flight for repairs, alteration, maintenance, storage. Number 2, evacuate from area of impending danger. 3, operation in excess of maximum certification takeoff weight. There's several. Delivering for export. There's several reasons that you would ferry an aircraft.
In this exclusion standard in all aircraft policies issued in Georgia?
To my knowledge, yes, sir.
Would the author be amenable to the idea of offering the industry an opportunity to have that covered for an additional premium, or maybe a discount for not having that telephone call made? Because my hesitation in going along with this is that obviously there's increased risk, or this wouldn't have ever been addressed to begin with, and it would give the underwriter an opportunity to provide loss control, particularly if it's a particularly expensive aircraft. That the underwriters be involved in an opportunity to mitigate any potential loss.
I see your point. In that you assume that it increases risk to the insurance company because you're flying with a permit. Evacuating an aircraft from an area of impending danger reduces the risk, doesn't add to the risk. So there's many, many reasons that you would ferry an aircraft. And as I said earlier, the state of South Carolina is causal in the state of Georgia, is contract, and it's covered in South Carolina automatically, and the premiums are practically the same. And I'll be able to verify that if you would like. I didn't bring that.
Follow-up question. Again, this goes back. Is there exclusion as well in the I'll call it the liability coverages associated with the contract, or is it limited to just the physical damage of the aircraft itself, the hull coverage?
That is what you have in your normal aircraft insurance policy. Whatever coverage you have in your normal aircraft insurance policy would be the same coverage when you carry the aircraft.
So, okay. No.
I understand that to carry an aircraft, you have to be a licensed mechanic by the FAA. It's just not some just a regular pilot that does this. It's someone with a lot of experience. And in my opinion, based on the years of experience the mechanics have and the requirements that they have to go through in the certification process, as far as piloting the aircraft is concerned, they are the best. And then to answer your question about the the airworthiness of the aircraft so that it's not in danger. The FAA does not give special flight permits out in a casual manner. Excuse me. You got to fill it out. You got to explain exactly what the problem is because they're interested in the safety of the pilot and the people on the ground. And that's their primary function. They don't care about the airplane. They don't care if you have to tow it with a truck. They want to make sure that it's safe for flight and that once it's safe for flight, the pilot is safe and the people on the ground are safe.
Okay. My final question, would you be open-minded to the idea that the industry could offer discounts for people willing to make that phone call in the event that they thought from their underwriting position that they would prefer to know about it because of the values involved or for whatever reason?
If they wanted to offer a discount, I mean, that would depend on whether the industry really cared to do something.
Okay. All right. No further questions.
I don't have anything to do as far as pricing is concerned. I just want to make sure that people are covered.
Thank you.
Okay, number 29.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Chokas. Just a quick question, just to make sure, I'm trying to understand this more than anything else. As I think I understand this, I reserve the right to be wrong on an hourly basis. What I think I'm reading is that, yes, if there's any exclusions or conditions, whether it's a phone call or a smoke signal or whatever it may be, that the insurer has to go ahead and put that in. But even if they go ahead and put that in, it's conspicuous. It's in 15 or 16-point type and in lavender lettering. It still doesn't defeat the fact that as long as the insured's in compliance with FAA regulations, the exclusions, the conditions, and everything else, and the limitation, that doesn't matter. That's what I'm reading. Is that correct? I mean, they can put every kind of exclusion and condition they want to, but if the bottom line is if there's not going to be any denial of a payment or claim as long as they're in compliance with FAA regulations, is what I'm reading. Is that incorrect?
Yes, sir. That's basically what this is, and it deals
Okay.
only with carrying. So that if they're carrying an aircraft and they meet the FAA regulations, then coverage can't be denied because of the phone.
I mean, but this is going right to the heart of this issue. It seems to me is there's a contract that two parties signed, going in eyes wide open. Now someone's not complying with the condition of a contract, and they want an escape clause. They want to be able to get out of it because they didn't comply with the conditions, which we're all on constructive notice about the laws, and you've all heard ignorance of the law is not an excuse. Well, I didn't know I couldn't go 75 miles an hour. Well, sorry. I think it has, my sense is, and I'm not sitting here opposing the bill, again, I'm just trying to understand what we're doing and what the precedent is. It sounds like, yes, there's a condition in the contract, we signed the contract, there's an understanding, and whether people at PDK or Charlie Brown or whatever know that exists or not, it's there. And one of the parties that's making the contract is relying to its detriment, whether it's company X, Y, or Z. I have no familiarity with aviation insurance, no clue. But I know that they're signing a contract, the insured signing a contract, the limitations and the conditions and so forth. But then this is saying, look, I know I signed this, but I'm in compliance with FAA regs, so that basically renders the contract null and void. Is that a precedent that we really want to set?
I see your point, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. And my question is, have they ever denied coverage, and what would be the reasons that they would deny coverage once it's FAA permitted? And that's why I see this as a loophole and not really as an increase in risk. In South Carolina, as I said earlier, South Carolina is a causal state, or a contract state, and there's no difference, significant difference, or any difference in, correct that, there's no significant difference in the insurance premiums. So varying an aircraft does not, in my opinion, and I could get experts to testify the same way, FAA for one, increase the risk to the insured. Otherwise, they would deny the permit. If they felt that there was a risk here, they would deny the permit, but they do.
Mr. Chairman, just a brief follow-up in
Yes.
response to that. I mean, I hear your point, but isn't that a private business matter as opposed to what we need to be involved in? The fact that the premium's not any different, whether it's a causal state or a contract state, respectfully, I would submit that I don't think that's relevant. If the insurance companies are dumb enough or smart enough to go ahead and, not charge what they should charge, that's on them. But the question is, that's a different issue than whether we should be setting the precedent of allowing a contract to really be null and void when there's a condition, when the condition's not been complied with, and we're just going to fall back to, well, we're in compliance with FAA regs, therefore the contract really doesn't matter. The fact that somebody's being charged or not charged, that's a private business matter. If insurance companies are underpricing themselves, that's their problem. If they're overpricing themselves, then the consumer needs to get out there and shop around, because there's plenty of commercial coverage out there from the big writers, the AIGs of the world, Chubb, whoever, who are going to go ahead and write that coverage, and that's just no different than shopping. I'm not saying it's no different than your auto insurance, but there's a shop around factor with anything that you buy, including that. I'm just worried about the precedent of rendering a clause that somebody went into eyes wide open and signed, just saying, well, it doesn't count because they're in compliance with FAA reg. Why even have the contract to begin with then? More of a statement than a question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Got one more. Mr. Tarver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question, the only problem's ever been if somebody didn't make the call. I guess if they didn't make the call, but if they make the call, the claims haven't been denied as far as we know.
It was brought to my attention because of an individual that had a claim, and the reason they decided not to pay the claim was because of the phone call. He had the permit, he had the mechanic flying the airplane, he had done everything that they did. And to be perfectly frank with you, and I don't know, Rick, if this addresses, I owned an airplane for over 10 years. I had no idea that I had to make the phone call. I've talked with several mechanics, and I've talked with several flight instructors. They did not know they had to make the phone call.
I thought, and of course this is a whole different matter, but in property and casualty, I thought you were supposed to call your insurance agent with a car wreck or a claim at home, or that was my only point.
But this wasn't a claim. This was basically a ferrying claim.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Mr. Teese.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And pardon my ignorance, but if I read this correctly in line 36, when it says it for policies issued on or renewed after July 1st, so this is not, unless I read it wrong, and like Chairman Golick, I reserve the right to be wrong on an hourly basis, although I can't charge as much as he can on an hourly basis. That this is saying if you start your policy on July 1st or you renew your policy, would it not be you're not breaking your contract, you are entering into a new agreement? And again, I'd love the wisdom of the committee to speak to that issue.
I'm going to turn to legal counsel on that one. What Sam said is this act shall be after the policy is issued on or renewed after July 1st, 2015.
Chairman?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my understanding is we cannot change an existing contract. So this would provide for moving forward with these contracts and what would be permitted or not permitted.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Is that it? 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick note. We've gone all around the world here. We're talking about an airplane that may not have even been damaged. It may just need a repair. You're just ferrying it somewheres.
It may be that there is a hurricane coming.
You're just getting it out of town.
Get it out of the way.
Okay, and the current policies do not specifically boldly, do they specifically say you must call, or do they say in little tiny print, or are we asking them to put it in bold print, or just saying we're not going to enforce that at all? In the future, we're not going to be a remedy for what's already happened in the past, but in the future, we want policies to say you must call, and here it is in bold, or no, you don't even have to call.
with this legislation is saying if you have a hearing permit from the FAA, the phone call is not necessary.
Okay, thank you. And that is going to be in the new policies that would be issued.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Georgia.
Okay, anybody else got a question? Okay. I guess it's time for a motion of some sort. Do I hear a motion to pass? Okay, got it. Second?
Second.
All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, raise your hand. Let's see, 1, 2. Okay. 3, do pass. What's number 29?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Hold on 1 second. Who was 29? Oh, okay. All right, thank you, sir. All right, last bill is for crossover. 552, Mr. Williamson. That should have nothing to do with it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Identify
I'm sorry.
your two cohorts there.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bruce Williamson. I'm here to present a bill today, and I've got with me Jay Florence with the Department of Insurance and the attorney Trey Sibley, who is with the Department of Insurance as well. I'm here today to ask for the committee's consideration of substitute to House Bill 552. It's LC 371971 ERS. This bill seeks to change our laws about taxation of captive insurance companies in Georgia. I'm talking about pure captives in Georgia. And right now, it's on our books, we can have pure captive insurance companies in Georgia, but they're in fact zero, and it all goes back to the fact that the way we tax captive insurance companies in Georgia. All Georgia premiums are subject to, I believe it's a 4% premium tax. This bill would simply reduce that premium tax on a pure captive, and I'll tell you a little bit about what that is in just a second, so we can attract that type of business in Georgia and hopefully grow jobs and allow our Georgia-based companies to find their insurance on a local basis rather than having to go out of state and then sometimes out of the country. But so the reason, let's look at a typical prospect for a pure captive. Typically, it's going to be either a publicly traded large company or down to a small, fairly affluent company, more often than not a family-owned business that has a large need to protect their assets, both property and casualty or liability. And a pure captive gives them a sophisticated financing technique for, rather than just retaining 100% of the risk themselves frankly on their balance sheet. You know, you can self-insure your own home if you want to. If you've got it paid for, you can take 100% of the risk. There's no law says you have to have homeowners insurance, but most of us think it's foolish to do that. You want to transfer that risk to an insurance company using the theory of large numbers to spread your risk along with everybody else. Well, as all of us have discovered on our personal automobile policies and our homeowners policies as well, you can begin to reduce your premium costs if you choose to self-insure more. And on a homeowners policy, we do that through a deductible. When they first started coming out with homeowners policies, they had very low deductibles, maybe $50 or $100. Well, now more often than not, you're taking a $500, $1,000, or $2,500. If you're down in coastal areas, you're taking $5,000 deductibles, or even percentage deductible. The problem of maximum loss when it was windstorm or flood perils involved. So as we've discovered just as consumers, you can save money by taking more of the risk yourselves. Well, a lot of our Georgia-based businesses want to take more of the risk themselves, and they can do that, again, through self-insurance or through the technique known as starting their own captive insurance company. And the advantages of that, it gets kind of complicated fairly fast, but rather than paying all the claims just out of their cash assets, you can actually set up a regulated insurance company that's only insuring your risks, but you figure out your expected costs. You use an actuary or some actuarial type service to replicate, rather than paying a premium to a property and casualty insurance company, you're going to pay the premium, the expected losses back to your own insurance company, and because of that, you can write off that premium off your P&L. So that by itself becomes an economic advantage for you to do that as a business owner. On top of that, as you accumulate the surplus within your own insurance company, you can earn interest, you can invest the assets that further allows you to retain more risk down the line. That's sort of a real simplistic, maybe it's not simple to explain in just a few minutes, but this language in our bill would simply allow more Georgia-based businesses to retain more of their own risk and therefore drive more money to their bottom line than is currently being done. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to let the committee ask questions. That's probably the easiest thing, and let the experts here at the table with me help answer. I mean, this is a department requested bill as a matter of record.
21.
Representative Williams, I just want to verify that these captives would be regulated by the Department of Insurance just like you'd regulate any other insurer that's doing business in Georgia.
That's correct, and they are in fact regulating other captives. Simply what we're missing the boat on in Georgia is pure captives.
Correct.
Which is just where the risks are limited to just one company.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to thank you for bringing this bill. It is a type of a self-insurance, but very exclusive, and it will be very beneficial to our corporations in this state, especially those who in today's world are very effective in their own risk management. So thank you for bringing this bill.
Okay, number 10.
Hey, Bruce. My question is liability, and I think Jason talked about it. Is there a possibility of this captive insurance company not being able to pay a claim?
Sure, but you don't have to carry liability insurance. Now, we're not talking about automobile or any kind of mandatory liability situations, but for example, general liability. You're a manufacturer, and the smart manufacturers can carry their operations liability, the general liability to injury to the public, and product liability. They don't have to do that. They can completely self-insure, which would be rather foolish on their part to do that, but again, it's their assets at risk if they choose not to, 100%. But the smart ones are going to they're going to transfer that risk over to an insurance company, but they're doing it at a much higher attachment point. And what I failed to mention is, more often than not, anybody that's setting up a captive insurance company is effectively going to have a huge deductible, and they're typically going to go after specific and aggregate reinsurance. And when I say specific in general liability terms, to any one occurrence. And let's say that it is a manufacturer and they have some product liability claims. They might have a bad product get out and have 10 claims across the country, and each one of the claims is $1 million each. Well, they would have specific coverage for any one claim, But when they ended up paying more than some aggregate number, there would be aggregate reinsurance that would kick in and cover them at some attachment point above, north of that amount, so they're protected. So again, it's just a technique for a Georgia-based company to retain more of the risk themselves at a lower cost point. They don't have to carry these coverages, but they don't have to in the absence of the insurance.
Well, and I appreciate you bringing this legislation, and my concern is what happens if the captive insurance company does not have large enough assets to take care of those claims, or is that addressed in the industry by regulations?
Well, let me see if I can. Oh, go ahead.
You can.
Well, remember, they're only protecting their assets. So let's say that it's a captive set up to insure somebody in the spirits and billboard business or whatever. You could set that up. Absent that vehicle, you're not. It's only yourself that's being protected. You're not. You're making the choice to either transfer 100% of the risk to, let's say, Allstate Insurance Company, Travelers Insurance Company, whomever, or retain some of it and use some reinsurance at a way north amount, like Zurich Re or whoever.
Yeah.
So it's not members of the general public being affected here. It's only the person that sets up the captive for their own benefit. The captive insurance company is not marketing these products to anybody else.
Well, I realize that, and that's not what I don't think that was quite the question that I had. Yeah. What I was saying is, what happens if there is a huge claim and it's more than the captive insurance company can handle? Is that a way of just protecting the insured, putting a cap on its liabilities?
A couple things. First, you do not have it in front of the bill you have in front of you, but the existing captive law already has, as Representative Shaw pointed out, oversight by the Department of Insurance, including reviewing a business plan to see what types of risks you're going to have, what type of assets you're going to carry. So there is regulatory oversight. Is there a risk that a company could go under? Sure, but it's always there.
Gotcha.
The other thing I'd point out is that this is a self-insurance arrangement. So even without this law, or without the use of a captive insurance company, if someone was self-insuring without a captive, they could still also not have enough money to pay the claim.
Gotcha.
And the third thing I'd point out is that there are pure captives that operate in Georgia, but they are not domiciled here in Georgia. We don't regulate them.
Gotcha.
So other states with laws similar or even more relaxed to the ones that we are asking for domicile and regulate, and those risks exist in Georgia. So,
can I ask one last question?
Yeah.
And the last question is, now basically what you're asking is to be able to get tax advantage for paying the premiums like any other business. If you were paying a premium to a third-party insurer or a captive insurer, to have the same tax advantage.
So yes, there's an existing tax rate. It's around 4%. They pay premium taxes like a traditional insurance company. But because we have no pure domestics or captives here, we collect $0 in premium tax. So we are dropping the rate in the hope of inviting more pure captives to come and domicile here, or a pure captive.
Thank you. At the appropriate time, Mr. Chair.
Got a couple more questions.
Okay.
23.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Williamson, real quick, regarding this reduction of the insurance premium tax, are there any companies today that could transfer and qualify under this that exist now? I know you said we don't have any pure captives, but if you're creating this pure captive, are there companies that will be able to transfer down the road and fall under this code section now?
Many Georgia companies that have pure captives that are just domiciled in Delaware or Hawaii or South Carolina or even offshore, they can just bring them back to Georgia day one.
When they come back here and they get this reduction, doesn't that have a fiscal impact to the budget? Should this have a fiscal note is my question.
I would argue no, because currently the pure captive tax that we collect is zero. So if they come back here and begin to pay a pure pay a...
But they're paying
tax.
a premium tax, aren't they?
No, sir. Pure
They're not paying any
captives
premium
pay
tax.
to their state of domicile.
Okay. So not paying on anything else right now in Georgia?
Not on their pure captive business. They may have other types of liability policies, but
Will they be able to transfer that over under the pure, if you put them under this law? Will that premium, will they be able to move any premium over where they get a reduction where they're paying? I'm not trying to stop it, I'm asking a question because
Yeah.
if there's a fiscal note requirement, you don't want to have that holding you up down the road.
no, they will not.
Okay. Why just one meeting per year, board meeting?
You know, I think we wanted to have some nexus in Georgia. I think other states, it's similar to what exists in South Carolina. And
I was just curious, because everything else looked like it would meet the requirements of domicile by being, just having everything based here.
Sure.
But then you're requiring one meeting. Are they typically doing meetings outside of Georgia? Or?
Well, that's a good question. I think because we don't have any, I can't answer it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
29.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question to the department. I know you've taken a look at the minimum capital requirements and the 500 to 250. It does seem a little low, but if there's comfort there on the part of the regulator, I support the bill. And there'll be, I assume, regular looks at, what's going on there. I assume the quarterly, and I just wanted to confirm, in terms of making sure the capital requirements are adequate and if they have to be adjusted from time to time, my assumption is that that information gets looked at fairly closely in the, I'm looking at the explanation of the changes. I assume that's what's going to happen in the quarterly or semi-annual filings. I saw that on the sheet, now I can't find it. Is that right?
Line 131
Okay.
says regulatory oversight. The commissioner does have the power and may visit each captive insurance company at any time, but obviously they would have an annual.
That's exactly right. In existing law, captives, there's annual reporting requirements, and as well as the examination authority that exists in other contexts.
With the startup, does it make more sense, and this is not by questioning the approach and strategy, but just thinking out loud, with a startup, so to speak, of a captive, does it make sense to be a little more rigorous in terms of keeping an eye on capital requirements, and then once you you establish a tradition and a foundation of stability, then maybe exhale a little bit more, just look at the policyholders and making sure that they're not adversely impacting that first few years of potential volatility.
It absolutely does, and I would say that in addition to what Representative Williamson pointed out, if you look at Chapter 10 of Title 41, the existing code section, we review the business plan and see how much premium they're going to write. So it's probably unlikely that 250 would ever be permitted, frankly.
What do you think the realistic number is?
Depends on the business. I mean,
Right.
it depends on the business, what they're writing.
But how often, just to be clear, how often will the department look at it? Is that established yet, or does it just depend on the company?
I will defer to Trey Sibley, who's the director of our insurance.
I mean, that may be a case-by-case basis, I understand that, but I assume it's going to be more than once a year with a startup captive, or is that not realistic?
No, it will be quarterly.
Okay.
It will be reviewed in a very similar way as admitted companies, so your regular insurance companies. So it'll be viewed in that way. Regarding the business plan, I mean, essentially for like a new startup, it's not new risk. These risks exist, so they'll supplement the business plan with existing data. They'll have to pull the data if they don't have experience, they would have to pull the data from other sources. But there will be data there. There will be an actuarial opinion. So it'll be regulated much the same way as they would be regulated today. Really, the change, as was mentioned before, is the tax rate, which is the disincentivizes the formation of pure captives here in Georgia.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. Number 20.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Jay, I appreciate you, Bruce, I appreciate you bringing this bill, and Jay and Trey assisting. I wanted to ask in regard to lines 175 to 178, our captive insurance companies are taxed as the premiums paid to captive insurance companies are paid. I'm sorry, let me ask this question. I'm concerned about the insurance premium tax. Is the 4 3/4? Is it 4 3/4 for property casualty? Is that paid on premiums paid into captive insurance companies?
So and that's what Representative Harbin was getting at, I think.
Right.
That for a pure captive, that money is paid to the state of domicile. So since we have no...
Zero in Georgia right now.
Exactly.
There would be no financial impact. Do we need clarifying language from lead counsel just to make sure that there is no sharing in the premiums that are spelled out in lines 175 to 178? This is all going to be paid to the state or the Department of Insurance to not be split with counties and cities. Do we need a specificity in here? I'm just asking. We don't need that.
The first, I think the preparatory, the introduction to the two subsections in lieu of other taxes imposed by this title.
Okay.
I think essentially this sets up, in number one, essentially the incorporation of Chapter 8, which is...
So we take care of it at the beginning of line 169? Okay. Mr. Chairman, perfect time I'd like to move.
Let's see, somebody else has done requested that. Mr. Chokus, I think. All right, go ahead.
Appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that House Bill 552 receive the due pass.
Second?
Second. By substitute.
Second by substitute, that's right, or as amended. All right, no, there wasn't amendments on this. Okay, I'm getting too many of them. All right, substitute 1971 ERS. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Very good. Go to rules.
Can that claim be flown? Is it always hauled, or?